My stepmother inherited everything when my father died. His fortune, his estate, his business, everything. But there was a problem. A prenuptial agreement, a clause my father had signed 20 years ago that said if he ever voided that prenup, his children would be compensated from her inheritance. And 3 months before he died, my father voided it. My name is Blake Morrison, and this is the story of how fighting for money revealed a truth that changed everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and what my father really wanted. My father, Richard Morrison, died of a heart attack at 68. Sudden, unexpected, devastating. The funeral was packed. Hundreds of people from his real estate empire, his charity work, his 40 years of building a legacy in Denver real estate. My stepmother Diane stood at the front, elegant in black, playing the grieving widow. She'd been married to Dad for 22 years since I was 10 and my sister Emma was 8. Our biological mother had died when Emma was a baby. Dad raised us alone for a few years, then met Diane at a charity auction. She was younger, 15 years younger, beautiful, charming, and seemingly devoted to Dad. Emma and I never fully trusted her, but Dad was happy, so we tried. 1 week after the funeral, Dad's attorney, Gregory Walsh, called Emma and me to his office. "Before we discuss the will, there's something you need to know," Gregory said, sliding a document across his desk. "Your father and Diane had a prenuptial agreement. Are you aware of this?" "Vaguely," I said. "Dad mentioned it once. Said it protected his business interests." The prenup stated that if they divorced, Diane would receive a lump sum payment of $2 million and nothing more. No claim to the business, the properties, or the investment portfolio. "But they didn't divorce," Emma said. "They were married when Dad died." "Correct, which means typically the prenup becomes irrelevant. In the event of death, the surviving spouse inherits according to the will. And Richard left everything to Diane." I felt cold. Everything? The house, the business, the properties, approximately $50 million in total assets. It all goes to Diane as his widow. "What about us?" Emma asked. "Blake and I worked in Dad's business for years. We helped build it. He promised we'd inherit." Gregory pulled out another document. That's where it gets complicated. The prenup had a clause, Section 7, Paragraph 3. It states, if this prenuptial agreement is voided by either party during the marriage, the party who voids it must compensate the other party's heirs with 25% of marital assets. I read the clause 3 times. "What does that mean?" "It means if your father voided the prenup while he was alive, Diane would be required to pay you and Emma 25% of the estate. That's $12.5 million. "Did Dad void the prenup?" Emma asked. Gregory pulled out a third document, signed, notarized, dated 3 months before Dad died. Yes, he filed paperwork voiding the prenuptial agreement on March 15th, which means legally you and Emma are entitled to compensation under Section 7. Emma and I stared at each other. $12.5 million. "But here's the problem," Gregory continued. "Diane claims she was never informed of the voiding. She says Richard never told her, and without her knowledge and consent, her lawyers are arguing the voiding is invalid." "Can she do that?" I asked. "It's complicated. Prenups typically require both parties to agree to modifications. Your father voided it unilaterally. Diane's lawyers will argue he couldn't legally do that without her signature. So we might get nothing. Or you might get everything Section 7 promises. It depends on what a judge decides. But Blake, Emma, you should know that Diane is hiring very expensive lawyers to fight this. She doesn't want to give up $12.5 million. "Neither do we," I said. "That money should be ours. Dad obviously wanted us to have it. Why else would he void the prenup?" That's the question we need to answer. After leaving Gregory's office, Emma and I sat in my car, both too stunned to drive. $12.5 million, Emma said quietly. "Split between us, that's over $6 million each. If we win, Diane's not going to just hand it over." Do you think Dad really meant for us to have it? Or is Diane right? Maybe he voided the prenup for romantic reasons and forgot about Section 7. I thought about Dad's last months. He'd seemed distant, distracted. I'd attributed it to his heart condition. He'd been having chest pains, had been seeing a cardiologist. Dad never forgot anything, I said. He was meticulous. If he voided that prenup, he knew exactly what Section 7 said. He knew it would trigger our compensation. Then why didn't he tell us? Why not just give us a heads up before he died? Maybe he didn't think he was going to die. Maybe he thought he had more time. Or maybe, Emma said slowly, he wanted to see what we'd do. Test whether we'd fight for it or let it go. That's dark, even for Dad. Dad was a businessman. He valued character over everything. What if this is his final test? See if we're greedy enough to fight Diane for money, or generous enough to let a widow keep her inheritance. That would be manipulative as hell. Would it? Or would it be smart? He spent his whole life teaching us values. Maybe this is his way of seeing if we learn them. I didn't want to believe it, but it sounded exactly like something Dad would do. Emma and I hired our own attorney, Patricia Chen, a fierce estate lawyer who specialized in prenuptial disputes. The key to your case is proving your father's intent, Patricia said at our first meeting. Why did he void the prenup? Was it to trigger Section 7 and compensate you? Or was it for some other reason? What other reason would there be? Emma asked. Love. Guilt. Maybe he wanted to show Diane he trusted her completely. Maybe he felt the prenup was insulting after 22 years of marriage. There are lots of reasons to void a prenup that have nothing to do with compensating adult children. So how do we prove intent? I asked. We look for evidence. Emails, letters, conversations with friends or colleagues, anything showing Richard wanted you to inherit. Do either of you remember him mentioning the prenup or the voiding? Emma and I shook our heads. What about his behavior in his final months? Did he seem worried? Guilty? Like he was planning something? He seemed happy, Emma said. Happier than he'd been in years. He and Diane were going on dates, taking trips. It was like they were newlyweds again. That didn't help our case. Patricia leaned back in her chair. Let me be honest with you. If your father appeared happy and in love with Diane when he voided the prenup, a judge is going to assume it was a romantic gesture. You'll have a very hard time proving otherwise. So we lose? I asked. Not necessarily, but you need to find something. Anything that shows your father was thinking about you when he made this decision. Otherwise, it looks like you're just greedy children trying to steal from their stepmother. We filed our claim 2 weeks later. Diane's response was immediate and aggressive. Her lawyers argued that Dad had voided the prenup as a romantic gesture, not a financial strategy. That he never intended to trigger Section 7. That Emma and I were simply greedy children trying to steal from their father's widow. The media loved it. Morrison heirs battle stepmother. Over $50 million estate was the headline on every local news site. Suddenly, Emma and I were the villains. The ungrateful children fighting their grieving stepmother over money. Then things got personal. Diane gave an interview to the Denver Post. I loved Richard with all my heart. We'd been married for 22 years. He voided the prenup because he wanted to show me he trusted me completely. His children never accepted me. They've always seen me as an outsider, someone who didn't deserve their father's love. Now they're trying to take away the security Richard wanted me to have. She cried on camera. It was a perfect performance. The public turned on us completely. Social media exploded with comments calling Emma and me greedy, heartless, cruel. My phone started ringing constantly. Reporters wanting statements, friends asking uncomfortable questions, even distant relatives calling to say I was disappointing Dad's memory. Blake, this is getting ugly, Emma said when we met at a coffee shop to discuss strategy. People are sending me death threats. Someone threw a brick through my window with a note calling me a gold digger. Same. I got fired from Dad's company. The board said my lawsuit was creating a hostile environment. Diane controls the board now. She's pushing us out of everything Dad built. So what do? Drop the claim? Emma looked at me. Do you think Dad wanted us to have that money? I don't know. I thought I knew Dad, but maybe I didn't. Why would he void the prenup right before he died? What was he thinking? Maybe we need to find out. Emma pulled out her phone and showed me something she'd found online. I've been researching Diane. Look at this. It was an old news article from California dated 15 years before Diane met our father. Wealthy businessman dies in tragic accident. Wife inherits estate. The photo showed a younger Diane standing next to a man in his 60s. Thomas Harper, the article said, died in a single-car accident on Highway 1. Diane was married before? I said. She told Dad she was a widow, but she never talked about her first husband. Never mentioned him. Don't you think that's weird? People process grief differently. Blake, her first husband was also rich, also older, also died suddenly, and she inherited everything, just like with Dad. I stared at the article. That's suspicious. It's more than suspicious. It's a pattern. We started digging into Dad's final months. Phone records, emails, credit card statements, anything that might reveal his intentions. What we found was strange. 3 months before he died, right around when he voided the prenup, Dad had hired a private investigator named Marcus Reed. Why would Dad hire a PI? Emma wondered. Only one way to find out. Marcus Reed worked out of a small office in a strip mall. He was in his 50s, former cop, professional and cautious. I can't discuss my clients, he said when we showed up unannounced. Our client is dead, I said, and we need to know what he hired you for. Still confidential, even after death. We're his children. We have a right to know. Marcus studied us for a long moment, then seemed to make a decision. Your father paid me to investigate someone. I delivered my findings to him 6 weeks before he died. That's all I can tell you. Who was he investigating? I can't... was it Diane? Emma asked. Our stepmother? Marcus's silence was answer enough. What did you find? I pressed. What did Dad discover about her? I'm sorry, I gave my report to Richard. What he did with it is his business, but... Marcus hesitated. Your father was a good man. Whatever he found, it weighed on him. When he paid me for the final report, he looked relieved. Like he'd confirmed something he suspected but hoped wasn't true. Do you still have copies of the report? No, Richard paid extra to have all copies destroyed. Said he didn't want anyone else to see what I'd found. Just him. But you remember what was in it? Emma asked. Marcus looked uncomfortable. I remember doing a background check on Diane Morrison. Previous marriages, financial history, places she'd lived, standard investigation. What I found, let's just say your father had reason to be concerned. Concerned about what? I can't say more without violating confidentiality, but if you hire me to do the same investigation, I could find the same information. Legally. Emma and I looked at each other. How much? 5,000, 2 weeks. Do it, I said. While Marcus worked, Emma and I continued our own research into Diane's past. We found Thomas Harper's adult children, 2 daughters living in San Diego. I called the older one, Jennifer Harper, and explained who I was. Your father married Diane? Jennifer said, her voice sharp. When? 22 years ago. He just died. Heart attack. There was a long pause. And let me guess, Diane inherited everything. Yes, how did you know? Because that's what she does. She did it to our father. Married him, he died 3 years later. She got everything. Do you think she killed him? I know she did, but we could never prove it. The police investigated. Our father drove off a cliff on Highway 1. They said he'd been drinking, fell asleep at the wheel. But my father rarely drank. And that night, Diane insisted on driving him to the restaurant, but then said she felt sick and he had to drive home alone. Convenient, right? Did you contest the inheritance? We tried. Fought it for 2 years. Spent $100,000 on lawyers. Diane's lawyers were better. They painted us as greedy children who couldn't accept that our father had moved on after our mother died. We lost everything. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just be careful. If Diane married your father and now he's dead, you need to watch yourself. She doesn't leave loose ends. After I hung up, I told Emma what Jennifer had said. Blake, if Diane killed Thomas Harper and she killed Dad, we might be next. We're fighting her for money. We're a threat. Then we need to find proof fast before she decides we're too dangerous to keep around. Marcus called us 2 weeks later. I've got my report. You need to see this in person. We met him at his office. He handed us a thick folder. Diane Morrison, born Diane Lawson. Married Thomas Harper in 1998. He died in 2001. She inherited $8 million. Before that, she was engaged to a man named Robert Sullivan. He died in a boating accident in 1995 before they could marry. She was the beneficiary of his life insurance. $500,000. Jesus, Emma whispered. How many people has she killed? I can't prove she killed anyone. But the pattern is clear. Diane targets wealthy older men, gets close to them, marries them, or gets named in their insurance policies. They die in accidents. She inherits. Why hasn't she been caught? I asked. Because she's smart. She spaces the deaths out. Different states, different methods, different circumstances. And she only goes after people whose deaths won't be heavily scrutinized. Older men with health issues, men who live risky lifestyles. Thomas Harper drank occasionally. She used that. Robert Sullivan owned a boat and went out. Alone frequently. She used that too. And Dad had a heart condition, I said. So when he died of a heart attack, no one questioned it. Older man, history of heart problems, suddenly dies. It happens all the time. Emma was shaking. We have to go to the police. With what evidence? Marcus asked. Suspicious patterns? That's not proof of murder. You need something concrete. Witnesses, physical evidence, a confession. Then how do we get it? Marcus thought for a moment. You said your father hired me 3 months before he died. That means he knew something. If he found evidence, he would have hidden it somewhere. You need to search his personal effects, his office, his files, his computer. If Richard discovered something about Diane, he would have documented it. Diane lives in the house now. She'll never let us search. Then you need to be creative. We needed proof. Real proof. Not suspicion or coincidence, but evidence that would hold up in court. If Dad suspected Diane, he would have documented it, Emma said. He was meticulous about records. Let's search the house. Diane lives there now. She'll never let us in. Then we go when she's not there. Diane had a standing nail appointment every Thursday at 3 p.m. She'd be gone for at least 2 hours. Emma and I still had keys to Dad's house, our childhood home. We let ourselves in feeling like criminals. We have 2 hours, I said. Start with Dad's office. We tore through his filing cabinets, his desk drawers, his computer. Nothing about the PI report, nothing about Diane's past. Then Emma found it. A small safe hidden behind a false panel in Dad's closet. Blake, look at this. The safe required a code. I tried Dad's birthday. Emma's birthday. Mine. Nothing. Try the date he voided the prenup, Emma suggested. March 15th. The safe clicked open. Inside was a USB drive labeled Insurance and a sealed letter addressed to Blake and Emma. Open only if I die unexpectedly. My hands shook as I opened the letter. Dear Blake and Emma, if you're reading this, I'm dead. And if I'm dead, you need to know the truth about Diane. 3 months ago, I hired a private investigator because I was suspicious about Diane's past. What he found confirmed my worst fears. Diane's first husband, Thomas Harper, didn't die in an accident. He was murdered. Diane drugged him with sleep medication, then staged the car accident to make it look like he fell asleep at the wheel. The investigation missed it because the drugs metabolized quickly and weren't tested for. There was also Robert Sullivan before Thomas, another accident that benefited Diane financially. I confronted Diane with this information. She didn't deny it. Instead, she told me that if I ever tried to expose her or divorce her, she would kill both of you. My children. She said she would make it look like accidents, just like Thomas and Robert, and I would have to live with the knowledge that I'd caused your deaths. I couldn't risk it. So I made a deal. I would void the prenup, give her complete access to my estate, and never speak of what I knew. In exchange, she would leave you both alone, forever. But I also included Section 7 in the prenup years ago as insurance. If I ever needed to void the agreement, you would still get 25%. I knew that if something happened to me, Diane would inherit everything. But this way, you'd at least get something. And maybe, with this letter and the evidence on the USB drive, you could expose her. The USB contains recordings of my conversation with Diane where she admits to killing Thomas Harper and Robert Sullivan, and where she threatens you. It contains the PI's report. It contains everything you need to put her in prison. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you better. I'm sorry I chose my life over justice, but I couldn't bear the thought of losing you. Use this evidence, stop her, and know that everything I did, including the prenup clause, was to keep you safe. I love you both, Dad. Emma was crying. I felt numb. Dad had known. He'd known Diane was a murderer and couldn't stop her because she'd threatened us. We need to go, I said, pocketing the USB drive and letter. Before Diane gets back. We were halfway to the door when we heard it. A car in the driveway. Diane was home early. Back door, Emma whispered. We ran through the house, but before we could reach the kitchen, Diane appeared in the doorway. She was holding a gun. I knew you'd come looking, she said calmly. Richard was always too sentimental. He couldn't help leaving clues, could he? Diane, put the gun down, I said. Give me the USB drive and the letter. Don't lie to me, Blake. I saw you come out of the bedroom. I know Richard had a safe. I could never find it, but clearly you did. Give me whatever you found. If we give it to you, you'll kill us, Emma said. Maybe. Or maybe I let you live if you're smart. Your father made a deal, his silence for your lives. You can make the same deal. Give me the evidence, drop the prenup lawsuit, and walk away. Forever. You killed your first husband, I said. You were going to kill Dad. I didn't kill Richard, his heart did. I was planning to, eventually, but nature beat me to it. So really, I'm innocent of that particular crime. You're insane. I'm practical. Thomas Harper was a mistake. Too young, too healthy, too suspicious. Richard was better, older, expected to die eventually. All I had to do was wait. But then he started investigating me, found out about Thomas and Robert, and I had to improvise. By threatening to kill us. It worked, didn't it? Richard voided the prenup, gave me everything, and kept his mouth shut. I got what I wanted without killing anyone. Well, except Thomas and Robert, but they were years ago. The police will figure it out, Emma said. They'll investigate. They'll find the same evidence Dad found. They'll find nothing. The PI destroyed his files. My lawyers made sure all of Thomas's investigation records were sealed. And once I have that USB drive, there's no evidence left. Just a grieving widow and 2 greedy stepchildren making wild accusations. She raised the gun. Last chance. The drive. Now. I looked at Emma. We had seconds to make a decision. Then I heard it. Sirens getting closer. Diane heard them too. What did you do? We called the police before we came in, I lied. Told them we had evidence of murder. They're coming. It was a bluff, but Diane panicked. She ran. Bolted through the back door, got in her car, and sped away just as police cars pulled into the driveway. Except we hadn't called them. Pure coincidence. A neighbor had seen us break in and called 911 thinking we were burglars. But Diane didn't know that. Her running made her look guilty. We gave the USB drive and led her to the police immediately. The recordings were damning. Dad's voice shaking but clear. "You killed Thomas Harper. You drugged him and staged the accident. And Robert Sullivan, too. You tampered with his boat engine." And Diane's voice, cold and confident. "Yes, and if you try to expose me, I'll kill your children, too. Blake and Emma will both die in unfortunate accidents. Car crashes, maybe, or gas leaks. I'm very creative. And you'll spend the rest of your life knowing you caused it. Is that what you want, Richard?" The PI report detailed everything. Thomas Harper's suspicious death, the drugs found in Diane's possession that she claimed were for sleep issues, her financial motive, witness statements from Thomas's children describing Diane's controlling behavior. It also detailed Robert Sullivan's death, the boat explosion that investigators had ruled accidental, but which showed signs of tampering that were never followed up on because no one had reason to suspect Diane. It wasn't enough to convict her of murder. Too much time had passed on too many technicalities. But it was enough to charge her with extortion, threatening to commit murder, conspiracy, and potentially manslaughter if prosecutors could make the case. Diane was arrested at the Canadian border trying to flee the country. She'd withdrawn $500,000 in cash from Dad's accounts, bought a fake passport under the name Diana Martin, and was planning to disappear into British Columbia. At her arraignment, she pled not guilty. Her lawyer argued that the recordings were obtained illegally through breaking and entering, that Dad's letter was hearsay from a dead man, that the PI report was unreliable and created by someone with a financial interest in helping us. But Diane had run, and running, the prosecutor argued, was consciousness of guilt. The judge set bail at $5 million. Diane couldn't make it. She'd only gotten $500,000 out before her accounts were frozen. She'd spend the trial in jail. The trial lasted 3 weeks and became a media sensation. The prosecution played the recordings, showed the letter, presented the PI report, called Thomas Harper's children, who testified about Diane's controlling behavior, how she'd isolated their father from family and friends, how suspicious his death had been. They also called Robert Sullivan's sister, who testified that Robert had been planning to break up with Diane the week before he died, that he'd told her Diane was too intense, too possessive, and that he wanted out of the relationship. 3 days later, his boat exploded while he was alone on the water. Diane's defense tried to paint Dad as paranoid and delusional. They argued he'd become obsessed with conspiracy theories in his final months, that the recordings showed him making wild accusations with no basis in reality. They called Diane's friends, who testified about what a loving wife she'd been, how devoted to Richard, how devastated by his death. But Emma and I testified about Diane's behavior after Dad died, about how she'd immediately changed the locks on the house, about how she'd fired Dad's longtime employees and sold off his business interests before his body was even cold, about how she'd fought viciously to keep us from our inheritance. And then the prosecutor revealed something we hadn't known. Diane had taken out a $5 million life insurance policy on Dad, without telling him, 6 months before he died. She'd forged his signature on the application, listing herself as the sole beneficiary. That changed everything. The insurance company's investigator testified that the signature on the application didn't match Dad's signature on other documents. That Diane had likely forged it. That the policy had been purchased right around the time Dad started investigating her past. She knew Richard was getting suspicious, the prosecutor argued. She knew he might discover her past, so she took out insurance, literally, to make sure she'd profit even if she had to kill him sooner than planned. This wasn't a loving gesture, this was premeditation. The jury deliberated for 2 days, guilty on all counts: extortion, conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, theft by deception, and 2 counts of manslaughter for Thomas Harper and Robert Sullivan. The judge sentenced Diane to 25 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for 15 years. As they led her away in handcuffs, Diane looked at Emma and me one last time. No more fake tears, no more widow's grief, just cold hatred. "Your father was weak," she said. He could have stopped me, but he chose you over justice. I hope you're happy with his choice. We are, I said, because he chose right. He chose love over revenge, protection over punishment. That makes him stronger than you'll ever be. Enjoy the money, Diane spat. It's all you care about anyway. Actually, Emma said, we've already decided what to do with it, and it has nothing to do with us. Diane's expression flickered with confusion as they dragged her away. With Diane convicted, the prenup dispute became moot. A convicted felon can't inherit from their victim under Colorado's Slayer statute. Dad's entire estate reverted to Emma and me. $50 million. Everything Dad had built over his lifetime. But something bothered me. Why had Dad included Section 7 in the prenup 20 years ago, years before he had any suspicion about Diane? I went back to Gregory Walsh, Dad's attorney. Did Dad ever explain why he wanted the prenup clause? Back when you first drafted it? Gregory pulled out an old file from 2002. Actually, yes. When we drafted the prenup, Richard was very specific about Section 7. He said, "If I ever void this agreement, it means something has gone terribly wrong. It means I've discovered something that changes everything. Make sure my children are protected, even if I can't protect them myself." He was thinking that far ahead? 20 years ago? Your father was one of the most careful people I've ever met. He hoped he'd never need that clause, but he wanted insurance. Just in case his marriage to Diane went wrong somehow. Did he suspect her even back then? I don't think so. But Richard had been through one tragedy already. Losing your mother. He wanted to make sure that if anything happened to him, you and Emma would be taken care of. The prenup protected Diane if they divorced. Section 7 protected you if he had to void the prenup for any reason. It was all about protection, not money. Everything your father did was about protecting the people he loved. That was his priority, always. Emma and I sat in a lawyer's conference room, staring at documents that would determine the future of Dad's $50 million estate. We could keep it all, Emma said. Invest it. Live off the interest. Never work another day in our lives. Is that what you want? No, but I wanted to hear you say it first. I smiled. We're not keeping it, not all of it. So what do we do? I'd been thinking about this since the trial ended. About Dad's sacrifice. About the people Diane had hurt. About what would actually honor Dad's memory. We set up a foundation, the Richard Morrison Foundation. It helps domestic violence victims. Gives them legal support, safe housing, therapy. Everything they need to escape dangerous relationships. Like Thomas Harper. Like Robert Sullivan's next potential victim. Exactly, and we fund it with $40 million. That leaves us $5 million each. Enough to be comfortable, but not so much we lose sight of what matters. Dad would like that. He'd love it, taking something horrible and making it meaningful. Emma was quiet for a moment. Blake, do you think we passed his test? What test? The prenup clause, Section 7. What if it really was a test? What if Dad wanted to see if we'd fight for money or do the right thing? We did fight for money. We sued Diane. We hired lawyers. We went to war over that 25%. But we didn't fight because we were greedy. We fought because something felt wrong. We investigated. We found the truth. We exposed a killer. That's not greed. That's justice. So we passed? I think we passed a test we didn't even know we were taking. The real test wasn't whether we'd fight for money. It was whether we'd use that fight to find the truth. Whether we'd choose justice over comfort. And we did. We did. So yeah, I think we passed. Before we finalized the foundation, we did one more thing. We contacted Thomas Harper's daughters and Robert Sullivan's sister. We wanted you to know, I told them in a conference call. Diane was convicted. She's going to prison for at least 15 years. Thank God, Jennifer Harper said. I could hear tears in her voice. We knew she killed our father, we always knew, but no one believed us. We believe you, and we're sorry it took so long. What about the inheritance? Robert Sullivan's sister asked. Did you get what you were fighting for? We did, Emma said, and we wanted to offer you something. Our father left us his estate. We're using most of it to start a foundation for domestic violence victims. But we want to set aside compensation for you for the families Diane victimized. It won't bring back your loved ones, but it might help. There was silence on the line. How much? Jennifer finally asked. $2 million, split between your families. It comes with no strings, no requirements. It's just what's right. Your father didn't even know our fathers, Robert's sister said. Why would you do this? Because our father taught us that doing the right thing matters more than money. And because your families deserve something after what Diane put you through. Jennifer was crying. Thank you. You have no idea what this means. We spent everything fighting her. Lost our savings, our homes, our peace of mind. This will change everything. That's what we hoped, I said. After the call, Emma looked at me. We're down to $36 million now. Still comfortable with that? More than comfortable. We're doing what Dad would want. That's what matters. 5 years later, the Richard Morrison Foundation had helped over 2,000 people escape abusive and dangerous relationships. We'd funded legal battles for victims fighting predatory partners. We'd paid for safe houses and counseling. We'd provided job training and financial literacy courses so people could rebuild their lives independently. And we'd prevented at least 3 deaths. People who came to us saying their partners exhibited the same warning signs as Diane, and who we helped escape before it was too late. Emma ran the foundation full-time. I split my time between the foundation and a new career as a victims' rights advocate, working with legislators to strengthen laws around prenuptial fraud and marital coercion. On the 5th anniversary of Dad's death, Emma and I visited his grave with copies of the foundation's annual report and letters from people we'd helped. We did it, Dad, I said, placing the documents on his headstone. We took your test, both versions, and we passed. We exposed the killer, we helped people. We didn't let the money corrupt us. And we understand now, Emma added. The prenup clause was never just about money. It was about protection, about giving us the resources to fight back if something went wrong, about trusting us to use those resources wisely. We chose right, I said. We chose truth. We chose justice. We chose to help others instead of just helping ourselves. The wind rustled through the trees. It felt like approval, like Dad was there with us, proud of what we'd built. I miss him every day, Emma said. But I'm grateful for the 22 years we had with him, for the lessons he taught us, for the trust he placed in us. Me too, and Emma, I think we're finally doing what he always wanted. We're using our privilege to protect people who can't protect themselves. That's what Dad spent his whole life doing. Now it's our turn. We stood there for a while, silent, remembering. Then we walked back to our cars, ready to get back to the work Dad's sacrifice had made possible. That evening, Emma and I had dinner at Dad's favorite restaurant. It had become our tradition. Every anniversary of his death, we met here to remember him and discuss the foundation's future. I got an email today, Emma said, from Jennifer Harper, Thomas's daughter. How is she? Good. Really good. She used the compensation money to go back to school. Got her master's degree in social work. She's working with victims of financial abuse now. That's incredible. She said something that stuck with me. She said, your father's gift didn't just give me money. It gave me validation. It said that what happened to my family mattered. That my father's death wasn't just an unfortunate accident, but a crime that deserved recognition. That meant everything. I felt tears sting my eyes. That's exactly what Dad would have wanted. Not just helping people financially, but helping them heal emotionally. We're doing good work, Blake. Real good. The kind of work that changes lives. Because we made the right choice. When we found that evidence, we could have used it to get the money and walked away. Could have let Diane go as long as we got paid, but we chose justice instead. Do you ever regret it? Fighting for the money in the first place? We could have just accepted Diane getting everything and walked away. I thought about it. About the year of legal battles, the media scrutiny, the public hatred, about finding Dad's letter and realizing the truth. No, I don't regret it. Because if we hadn't fought, we never would have investigated, never would have found the evidence, never would have stopped Diane. She'd be out there right now, finding her next victim. So the prenup clause saved lives, not just ours, but all the people Diane would have hurt in the future. Exactly. Dad's plan worked, not the way he hoped. He hoped we'd just get the money and never have to know the truth. But when that didn't happen, when Diane forced a fight, we had the resources and motivation to find the evidence. A safety net with multiple layers. That was Dad, always thinking 3 steps ahead. We raised our glasses in a toast. To Dad, to his impossible, complicated, brilliant plan. To passing the test we didn't know we were taking. To family. And to doing the right thing even when it's hard. We drank, surrounded by the life Dad had built and the legacy we were creating in his honor. The prenup clause had been a test, a trap, a failsafe, a gift. But most importantly, it had been love. Complicated, imperfect, far-thinking love. The kind of love that protects people even after you're gone. That sets up safety nets they'll never see unless they need them. That trusts them to make the right choices when tested. That was the inheritance that mattered. Not the $50 million, most of which we'd given away, but the values, the integrity, the commitment to justice and protection. That was what Dad had really left us, and we'd spend the rest of our lives proving we were worthy of it. This is Blake Morrison, reminding you that not all tests are obvious and not all inheritances are about money. My father included a clause in his prenup that seemed transactional, 25% if he voided the agreement. Simple math, but it was actually about protection, about character, about whether we'd use resources wisely or selfishly. We fought for the money. That part wasn't noble. But we fought for the right reasons, because something felt wrong. And that fight led us to the truth. Sometimes the greatest gifts aren't what we receive, but what we do with what we're given. The choices we make. The people we help. The justice we pursue. My father gave us money, but more importantly, he gave us purpose. If this story resonated with you, like and subscribe for more stories about family, inheritance, and the complicated tests that reveal our true character. Leave a comment. Have you ever been tested by someone you loved? Did you pass or fail? What did you learn about yourself? Remember, inheritance is about more than money. It's about values, integrity, and the example we set for the next generation. It's about taking what we're given and using it to make the world better. That's the real test, and it never ends. Thanks for watching, and thank you, Dad, wherever you are. We passed your test. We hope that makes you proud.